The clatter of a cereal bowl hitting the kitchen floor shattered the morning's fragile quiet, milk pooling like spilled secrets across the tiles. My son, Ethan, stood frozen, his 6-year-old eyes wide with something darker than surprise. "Mom was crying in a stranger's car last night," he blurted, his voice small but piercing, slicing through the hum of the coffee maker. My wife, Sarah, choked on her toast, her face blanching as if the air itself had turned to ash. I sat there, fork suspended over my eggs, the metal cold against my fingers, while a pulse of dread throbbed in my chest. I didn't ask why. I couldn't. The kitchen smelled of burnt toast and the faint tang of orange juice, its brightness mocking the sudden weight in the room. Sarah's eyes darted to mine, then away, her fingers twisting the napkin into a knot. "Ethan, sweetie," she said, her voice trembling like a taut wire. "You must have dreamed it." But Ethan shook his head, stubborn, his lips pursed. "I saw you. From my window. You got out of a black car, and you were crying." His words hung there, heavy, undeniable, like a photograph you can't unsee. I wanted to laugh it off, to call it a child's imagination, but the way Sarah's breath hitched told me something else. Something I wasn't ready to name. Last night she'd told me she was at book club. I'd believed her because I always did. Sarah, with her soft brown curls and the laugh that still made my heart stutter after 10 years, didn't lie. Or so I thought. I replayed the evening in my mind. Her coming home late, her eyes red-rimmed, blaming allergies. The way she'd avoided my touch, claiming exhaustion. I'd rationalized it all, chalked it up to a bad day. Now Ethan's words cracked that fragile excuse like thin ice. I cleared my throat, the sound harsh in the silence. "Ethan, go get ready for school," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He hesitated, sensing the shift, then shuffled out, his sneakers squeaking on the floor. Sarah didn't move. Her hands were still now, clutching the napkin like a lifeline. I wanted to demand answers, to shout, but my tongue felt leaden. Instead, I stood, scraping my chair against the tiles, and started cleaning the spilled cereal. The mundane act grounded me, kept the storm in my chest from spilling out. "You're not going to ask?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, threaded with guilt and defiance. I kept my eyes on the floor, wiping up milk with a dish rag, its damp chill seeping into my skin. "What's there to ask?" I said, the words bitter like coffee grounds on my tongue. I didn't want to hear it. Not yet, because hearing it would make it real. The day dragged on, each hour a slow unraveling. I went to work, sat through meetings, nodded at the right times, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying Ethan's words, Sarah's face, the black car I hadn't seen. I thought of the past few months, her late nights, her distracted silences, the way she'd started locking her phone. Small things easily dismissed. She was stressed, I told myself. Work was hard. But now those moments felt like breadcrumbs leading to a truth I didn't want to face. By evening, the house was too quiet. Ethan was at a friend's and Sarah was in the living room, curled on the couch with a book she wasn't reading. The lamplight cast shadows across her face, sharpening the lines of worry etched there. I stood in the doorway, my hands shoved in my pockets, feeling like an intruder in my own home. "We need to talk," I said finally, my voice low, as if speaking too loudly would break something irreparable. She closed the book, her fingers lingering on the cover, and looked at me. Her eyes were glassy, not with tears but with something worse, resignation. "It's not what you think," she started, but the words sounded hollow, rehearsed. I sat across from her, the coffee table a chasm between us. "Then what is it?" I asked, my voice cracking despite myself. "Because Ethan saw you, crying, in a stranger's car." Her lips parted, then closed. She looked away, out the window where dusk was bleeding into night. "It was a colleague," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "Mark. From work. He gave me a ride home." My stomach twisted. Mark. The name conjured a face, charming, too polished, the kind of guy who always seemed to linger too long at office parties. I hated that I knew his name. "Why were you crying?" I pressed, my hands clenching into fists. She swallowed, her throat working. "We were talking. About things." I got emotional. Her vagueness was a knife, twisting deeper. "What things?" I demanded, louder now, the anger I'd suppressed all day boiling over. She flinched, and for a moment I saw fear in her eyes. Not of me, but of what she'd have to say next. It's not an affair, she said quickly, as if saying it fast would make it true. But I've been confiding in him. About us. About how I feel, trapped sometimes. The word hit like a punch. Trapped. 10 years, a home, a son, and she felt trapped. I wanted to scream, to ask how I'd failed her, but my throat closed up. Instead, I stood, pacing the room, the carpet muffling my steps but not my rage. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice raw. Why him? She looked down, her hands twisting together. Because he listened, she said, and the simplicity of it broke me. I thought of all the times I'd been too tired, too distracted, assuming she'd always be there. I hadn't seen her slipping away. The truth unraveled over the next hour, each word a fresh wound. No physical affair, she swore, but an emotional one, late-night talks, shared secrets, a connection that had grown in the cracks of our marriage. I wanted to hate her, to hate Mark, but all I felt was grief, thick and suffocating. We sat in silence, the weight of her confession pressing down on us. Then she said, I'm sorry, but I don't know if I can stay. The words were a detonation, shattering the last of my denial. I stared at her, the woman I loved, and saw a stranger. You'd leave us, I whispered, thinking of Ethan, of the life we'd built. She didn't answer, just looked away, tears spilling down her cheeks. The twist came later that night, after she'd gone to bed, and I sat alone in the dark. I checked her phone, something I'd never done before, driven by a need to understand. There, in her messages, was Mark. Not just a colleague, but her boss. And not just texts, but plans to leave, to start over, to take Ethan with her. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was a calculated escape. My hand shook as I set the phone down, the screen's glow burning into my eyes. I didn't wake her. I didn't scream. I just sat there, the house creaking around me, wondering how I'd missed the moment our life became a lie.